So when did the golden age of the music press end? There's an argument that said it went right to the end of the millennium, right to the end of the 1990s. I don't think it did editorially, because by then a lot of magazines were kind of dumbing down, they're trivialising. There wasn't the quality of writing that you got previously. But sales-wise, it was fantastic. I mean, particularly if you don't mind me talking about Britain for the moment. In Britain, it was a very, very lively time in the 90s. Britpop was obviously massive. At the same time, the acid house dance explosion thing was still going on. And towards the end of the 90s, there were actually 2 weekly music magazines, Enemy and Melody Maker, 10 monthly magazines, and a whole host of specialist dance magazines, all surviving, all getting ads, all getting decent circulations. 10 years on, more than half of those magazines have gone. Martin James is a former music journalist who used to work for Melody Maker and dance magazines, and is now senior lecturer in popular music studies in Southampton University in England. He teaches a course in music journalism, and he tells me this. Every year I have an intake of 20 18-year-old students, and normally not one of them has ever read a music magazine in their life. All they read is blogs, never even seen the enemy. Which really is a fascinating thing when you think these people want to be music journalists. They're going on a course, these music journalism studies, and all they've read is blogs, which shows how times have changed. The collapse in the sale of music magazines, physical music magazines, was established well before the credit crunch came into effect. So, where have all these readers gone? Where have the missing 700,000 readers in the 1970s gone? Have they lost interest in music? Well, no, clearly not. Because CD sales, as we all know, CD sales are falling because of piracy and because of the internet, because of downloads. But there's still no evidence of an overall lack of interest, like a drop of interest in music. People still consume as much, as you can see by, for example, the booming live industry. People still care about rock stars. You can see by celebrity magazines selling so well and blogs that are sort of dedicated to them. So people still care about music. What they don't need anymore is the music writer. They don't need the music journalist the way they used to kind of tell them what was going on, to explain the story. But I would argue that Q and NME particularly, and in America Blender as well, are making things worse for themselves. Because what they've always done, their unique selling point, has always been to take music very seriously. To talk to, whether it's Queen, whether it's Led Zeppelin, whether it's Blur, whether it's Lily Allen, about music in a way that kind of gives her respect and gravitas and wants to get the story off her, to sort of connect on that kind of level. Because music fans, when you're a teenager and you're into music, you do care about it a lot. Think back to when you were teenagers, whoever you're liking then. Think people in the 90s liking Radiohead, that band's a really important thing to them. And they want to be taken, they want to kind of be given respect and taken seriously by music papers. But what's happening is, NME and Q have very much gone the route of gossip magazines. It's not just a question anymore of music fans not needing critics, not needing writers like they used to. These days they are the critics. Anybody who wants to can be a critic, and frequently is. Because as quickly as physical magazines have lost readers, given up the ghost and died, online titles have sprung up to replace them. It's often not even online titles, it's just people with a website and a blog. And the advantage of this, of course, is obvious. People can write what they want, when they want, about what they want, and at the length they want, for the sheer fun of it. With blogging, there's no need to even leave the bedroom. As long as you've kind of got a slight degree of technical savvy and know what you're doing, you're away. You can upload your reviews and your views and tell the world what you think about anything you want to, musically. Now, if you surf the web for just one morning, looking for music blogs, you'll find some interesting things. You'll find there's some very, very good bloggers out there. There are far more completely hopeless ones spouting cliches and drivel, but that's always been the way with the music press. That's not unique to blogs. Because to go back to the football analogy we started with, everyone thinks they can manage anything in a football team, but not everyone can. Not everyone's a good critic. It is, a specialised skill. But the important point from both the reader and the critic's perspective is that what this influx of people writing for nothing on blogs and online magazines does is decrease the market value for music journalists. Particularly in a recession, it gets the old light bulb going over the publisher's head, which is these people write about music for nothing, for the thrill of seeing their name on a screen or on a page. Why do they pay for music reviews? Why don't they kind of want to pay a journalist? These websites say that the prestige and perks of writing for them should be enough. The thinking runs that the reviewer gets a free CD or a free download, they get a free ticket to a gig. What more can they ask for? And they get to see the name on screen as well. Oh, what a bonus. It's a clever trick that they're pulling there. But it's not a victimless one. I talked to one or two friends in America when I was compiling this talk about their experiences at the second, And one journalist who's worked for many, many magazines, written books for 15 years or so, said this. The line I hear all too often is, why should I pay you when there are dozens of other writers out there willing to work for free? My friend says he tries to submit that he's been writing about music for a long time, and he maybe has a bit more to say than some kid out of college who wants to see his violin on the screen. I mean, music writing is to a large degree a young person's game. It always has been, and it makes sense that it is. And if all that's happening is that they're clearing out a few superannuated old music writers and bringing in the fresh, eager young talent, maybe it's all for the better. But I think the implications for the music press run deeper than this. And one question worth asking is, where are the voices of dissent now? Because the music press at its peak in the 70s, 80s era used to be independent, idiosyncratic and powerful. It didn't respect egos, it was feared because it had teeth. And I think it's quite good in a way that artists were quite scared of the music press. It was not a bad situation to be in. It can seem like the Mavericks, the Extroverts, the Lester Bangs, the Huntress Thompsons, the Paul Morleys, even the Everett Trues have left the building. And too often, what's left behind nowadays is underpaid hacks towing the party line of undiscriminating, record company-pleasing sycophancy. So maybe the future lies in blogs, because that is where you can be completely away from interfering editors and publishers and so forth. But again, for the writer, the problem is, for all the huge noise made about the brave new world of blogs and how provocative and audacious they can be, you're not going to make any money out of them. The only way to monetize something like that is to charge subscription fees or to take adverts. The music industry faces many, many crises, not least whether the major labels will survive. It'd be silly to say that the plight of the music writer is not the major priority facing the music industry. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. And what we've learnt during this brief talk is that there are far less spaces for serious discussion of artists and music than there used to be in the days when Rolling Stone, Cream, NME, that kind of magazine was really doing the jobs. Magazines are closing and the ones that aren't are dumbing down. There are exceptions, but there aren't enough of them. Online outlets, in truth, online magazines are taking up some of the slack. Virtual titles are springing up, and some of them are well written, but as we said, you'll be paid nothing or a pittance for crafting those words. And I'm sure you'll all agree, it does help to get paid when you go into work. It just makes buying food and stuff that much easier. So what is the future, in conclusion? What is the future for music writing in the digital age? What's almost certainly happening is we're entering an era of deprofessionalisation for music journalists. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get worse. I mean, because there's always good writing out there if you look hard enough for it. What it does mean is that with the exception of the last few very old hands clinging limpet-like to jobs on broadsheet newspapers or on Rolling Stone, it's going to be virtually impossible to make a living from writing about music. It's just not going to be an option anymore. You're going to have to multitask, write about other things. Unless sites like Pitchfork that are maintaining good writing standards begin to increase their rates to hold on to good writers, it's just going to be a dying... I mean, you do get dying jobs. Chimney sweep, that's a dying job. It could be a music writer, could be a job like that. Being a music journalist always seemed like a job that was too good to be true, and maybe it was in truth for those years. And maybe rock writing will stop being a steady profession like a state agency or whatever, and return to being the province of obsessives and mavericks and non-worldly sorts, people that are burning with something to say about Kings of Leon and Lady Gaga. And maybe that's the way it should be. I mean, as I said when I began, everybody wants to manage the England football team, but you've got to be really passionate and dedicated to want to manage it if you don't get paid for doing so. I've always thought that the kind of approach that magazines like Mojo and The Word and Uncut have towards music, but they tend to apply it to the dusty old specimens of the Beach Boys and the Beatles and so on. A magazine written that intelligently and that thoughtfully about current artists, about the Ting Tings and Kid Cody rather than about the old generations, I think it would do well. I mean, it's really kind of, I suppose it's a gut instinct. They've got no kind of, facts to back this up. And it would be very hard to launch a new magazine at the second into the music field. But just kind of common sense tells me that when the Sunny magazine is doing the dumbed down thing, one that did the intelligent thing would have a chance of doing well. And I think it's partly a generational thing as well. People in their teens and 20s now who've grown up mostly with virtual media feel completely at home with that. Whereas people in the sort of late 30s, 40s and older still like holding a magazine, still like sort of buying it in the store and sitting and reading it. There's definitely a generational divide.
Try to get the NME.com to pay you for your work though.
Yeah, maybe that could work. Yeah.
So do you think that when people don't buy records anymore but just download them on iTunes, that they won't read the printed magazines anymore because they are used to the digital music, so they're used to reading digitally? that they don't have to read the printed music because they don't have like the printed covers of the records anymore?
I think it's the same generation that are downloading music mainly and reading the virtual media. That's true. I don't know if these people necessarily have less interest in music stars. I wouldn't like to say that somebody who's now into, I don't know, Amy Winehouse, let's say Lily Allen, say, is less interested than somebody who's into Debbie Harry 20 years ago. Probably the same kind of levels of interest in the person making the music. But they just use to consume, to sort of feeding that interest and learning about them in different ways. And yes, you're right, online is the way they'll turn to first. In the end, all you can do, I think, in that situation is hang your hat on quality and look for really, really good writing.